Hey Legionnaires, and welcome back to another Dawnless Days video, but we're doing something a little bit different today. So a long time ago, hopefully I put up like a picture of the screen of like how long ago it was. It might have been like a year, maybe longer than that ago. I did a top 5 siege factions for Dawnless Days Total War, and that is just the vanilla Dawnless Days. We're going to have no Last Breath, no War of the Mountains, or any of the other sort of submods that add in a whole load of other factions, which could add to the argument. We are just going to go with the core vanilla Dawnless Days mod, and we're going to just assess the top 5 sort of land battle factions here today. As you might be able to tell from the title, that's what we're checking out. So yes, we're going to do that one instead, and then maybe I'll do later on like a top 5 like overall factions. But then maybe I'll do that once the campaign's out, maybe, so you can have like throw campaign, land battle, and siege into the whole sort of equation. But yeah, it's something a little bit different. I felt like, you know, we've done a lot of sort of like battles recently for Dawnless Days, and I know you guys do enjoy this mod. I just thought we'd do something a little bit different, mix it up, and as we wait for the campaign to arrive. But yeah, no further ado, we'll get straight on into the video. I hope you do enjoy the video. If you do remember to leave a like, subscribe, comment, all that shenanigans, and yeah, I'll see you guys with number 5. So at number 5, we do have Dale, the Kingdom of Men in the North. And yeah, in my opinion, I think these guys are a pretty useful and very versatile land army that you could have on the battlefield in Dawnless Days. They have a good amount of range, as you can see here with the Bardings marching on by. They have reasonable infantry in their Vineland Guards and also their Dalian swords, and they have pretty good spears that can support you in a cav fight if you need spears as well. Speaking of cav, they have pretty useful cav, including their Ravanian regents and also their Dalian cavalry regiments. They are also generally good in pretty much every department when it comes to missiles, with sort of skirmishes as well, which have now recently become the meta for playing Dawnless Days. And with the key thing in this sort of rundown of factions, cavalry, as I was saying, is so key. And if you need to win a battle, you need to have good cavalry. And yes, Ravanian Regents, a very top tier elite cavalry unit that can be brought. And then after that, you do have the Dalian cavalry, which can support, because the Ravanian Regents maybe only capped at 1, but you can bring plenty more Dalian cavalry regiments, and often you can have 3 or 4 of those along with the Ravanian Regent, and then you might also bring escort mercenaries or something like that as a melee cav if you want to try and use something like that instead as well. But yeah, it's certainly a really good faction, and you can just about bring everything from levy to elite in each category of sort of cavalry, infantry, and ranged. So at number 5, I have Dale. At number 4, in the best factions for a land battle in Dawnless Days, we do have Gondor, as you can see with the glorious Swan Knights here. A perfect example, a shining example of an elite cav unit that you require in a Dawnless Days land battle. And yeah, these guys can just about take on any cav unit on the battlefield. They are a match for just about any sort of faction and their cavalry, and are a perfect example. Gondor, again, very similar to Dale, is very versatile in just about every sort of area when it comes to units. Their infantry is second to none. I mean, they have some amazing units, certainly like the Osgiliath veterans here. These guys are amazing, led by Boromir himself. A new unit added, but another very useful asset that's been added in. Some very unique generals. And their spears, again, really useful. A Citadel Guard, again, very useful. Can be either to hold the line or whether they are to be used to support cavalry. They are really good. I mean, infantry across the sort of board for Gondor can be very good. Swords are really good, can hold up against most infantry. The spears, like I was saying, very useful whether you bring the elites or whether you bring the cheaper ones to support your cav fights. And cavalry, you have a good wide selection from shock cav with the Swan Knights to also spear cav with the Prince's Sergeants and also the Gondor cavalry. You have great options all around. Something different, though, that Gondor can bring to Dale, that Dale can't bring, is the polearm sort of situation. So Founding Guard, that also are Prince's Coast Guard as well, that Gondor can bring, that Dale really can't. They have a pike unit, but polearms, I feel like, just a little bit more mobile, a little bit more useful in a sort of a land battle. And I mean, these are elite polearms as well, which is why I've highlighted the Founding Guard. They have that sort of extra layer, sort of like experience and elite level, sort of in this sort of category here as well, which Gondor just kind of pips for me over Dale in this sort of scenario. And also, I just think because you can bring more elite heavy cavalry than the Ravanian regions, they can bring just one Ravanian region, while there's Knights of Silver Swan, you can bring 3 of those guys, and you can bring Imrahil, so now you can bring a potential of 4, which often is the maximum requirement that you can bring in a land battle anyway in typical sort of TDD rules. And yeah, to sort of wrap it all up, archers, as you can see here, we have Gondor archers and Athelian rangers, all really good units that can be useful. Athelian rangers can hide until the very last minute in a land battle, put them in some sort of wooded area or in rugged terrain. They'll hide until they are seen in the last minute. Focus down units, and then also can be pretty useful in melee. So yeah, for me, Gondor is going in at number 4. At number 3, we have Rohan, the Horse Lords led by Theoden, king of all of the Rohirrim. We have, yeah, them as number 3, all pretty much a Cav-heavy faction. So, I mean, as I was saying earlier, Cav being king in Dawnless Days and generally in Attila, yeah, you've got to have Rohan in the mix in this sort of argument for being the best when it comes to land battle factions. And yeah, I personally think they are pretty good. They have a lot of cavalry options as well. As you can see here, we have the Household Knights of Theoden on show. You also have plenty of other units here. We've got behind the Kingsmark riders with their sort of hybrid options of being a melee cav and also a bow cav. These guys are very, very good as well. Added recently, added a little bit more bite to Rohan to make them a little bit more effective. And yeah, there's some really, really good units for Rohan. Only sort of thing that brings them down, and I'd say, honestly, these guys could have been a top spot, if not a second sort of spot argument, is because of their sort of their infantry capabilities. Unfortunately, their infantry, it just lets them down. The best they have to offer is their Erling Retainers as a sword unit, and we have the Erling Men at Arms here as well, the spear variant in the front lines. Their Guard and Moodseld are pretty decent. They're elite infantry, but they are a spear unit. They may look damn fine and probably one of the best looking units around, but they do not do well when facing up against a shock infantry unit or something like that, which some of the better factions can just bring to the table, which will defeat them. And the other sort of good unit that they do have is actually an arch unit. The Helmingas are a really good unit, which does, I think, in a way, get them back up that pecking order. A good hybrid unit. It's an elite hybrid unit that's both got like axe variant and it can bring out an axe. It can also fire its a bow and arrow, and they can do some pretty good damage with those. In my opinion, this is why Rohan has to come down from maybe being a 1 or a 2 to being a 3. It's just their infantry just lets them down. And yeah, that is just for me why they are going to end up at number 3 in this list. In the lands of Mordor, we have number 2. Yes, it is Mordor. Personally, I think for a faction that, you know, isn't really renowned for cavalry, this can be number 2 on the pecking order when it comes to land battles. They have really, really good units all across the board, in my opinion. You see them more commonly being used as well in a land battle. These guys are really good with infantry. They have really good cav, and also they have some other very nasty beasties that they can use to their abilities. Firstly, something we have to address that most of the other factions that we mentioned, well, I think any of the factions we have mentioned so far before do not have, is trolls. You have the Ologhai here on show. These guys, heavily armored tanks of the Middle-earth battlefield. These guys can soak up ammunition, so they can basically make enemy archers redundant, and they also are obviously got a massive warhammer that they can use to carve through enemy battle lines. These guys can also be used great for anti-cav units. So if they get into fights against cavalry, these guys are going to just dominate that battle there. And the cav can keep hitting them time after time, and they will do little to no damage to a troll unit as they come in. And the other unit that obviously is going to assist in that cav fight, you can see here, is the Servants of the Eye. These are the elite Black Numenorian cavalry. These guys look amazing, and they are amazing in battle. An elite cav unit and they're a melee cav unit. They obviously need to try and get the charge first themselves to give themselves a fighting chance, but even if they don't get that charge, they are pretty good in a prolonged melee, which is probably what you're going to end up having to have if you fight these guys. And if you can get spears in to support these guys, you've got an easy win when it comes to a cav fight. And yeah, these two, the trolls and the cav, work very nice as a duo. Get the cav in to sort of pin down the enemy cavalry, and then get the slow-moving trolls to come up and support and just start knocking riders off horses. Mordor also does have a wide variety of elite infantry. I mean, we've got the Orc bodyguards here on the front line, led by Othrod, who is the new general that's been added for Mordor, which is awesome. But yeah, they also allow you to now to bring 2 Orc bodyguards, 2 elite units. If you bring Othrod, it is a bit of a risk because it does mean you're missing out on another Servants of the Eye if you don't bring the Witch King. So it depends on what sort of build you're going for with Mordor. But you can bring some more elite infantry. The Uruk Throng, maybe not as good as some of the more elite Gondor sort of infantry. Like even the Gondor swords are probably going to beat them. But you can bring a lot of them. And yeah, they are very, very handy to bring. Also, you've got things like Guards of the Teeth, and also the Mordor Bow Rabble, a very handy bow unit to bring, along with Uruk Archers. Either one, depending on your funds and what you have, can be very useful in the right way used. And Mordor, in my opinion, is a very, very strong faction to be brought in a land battle, and can just about take on any sort of faction, I feel like. Certainly a Gondor or a Dale that we've mentioned here before might struggle a bit more with Rohan if Rohan was supposed to go all cav, but then I feel like Rohan's still going to have a few issues with trying to deal with things like the trolls and also things like pole arms and spears that Mordor can bring to the game if it needs to, and I think that counteracts Rohan, which is why for me, because Gondor and Rohan and Dale don't have that sort of anti-cav unit like the trolls of Mordor. Mordor goes in at number 2 for me. And at number 1, for the Dawnless Days best land battle faction, we have Imladris. And this is, of course, my opinion, I just like to say. Many of you might be saying, no, Pope, you're wrong. It is not this. But in my opinion, and what I have seen in battles and streams, I just think this faction is feared by multiplayer players that play just any other faction, and it's a land battle. And you see Imladris coming across the battlefield, you know you're in for a tough game. I mean, you can see the Guards of Imladris here. These are elite infantry units led by Elrond, I just also add. So, you know, he's an absolute legend of the world of Middle-earth. But yeah, these guys here are elite. They'll fight to pretty much the last man. Give them a couple more chevrons. It's going to be really tough to kill these guys off. And this is just the backbone of your army. You just have to bring a couple of these. Imladris is not going for mass, but it is going for elite troops. And yeah, you're going to probably bring all 4 of these. And then the next unit you're going to bring absolutely is the Noldorian Rangers. These are probably the best cav in the game right now. And they have been for a little while. They're a bow cav unit. They are now technically a melee infantry unit, but they are basically just a bow unit. They have... So that, if anything, make them a melee cav unit, makes them better in prolonged melee. They are very light, so armor-wise they're not doing so great. You want to kind of keep them out of range of other archers if you can, which is the only way to really counter them. You don't want to stay standing and shooting at something for a long time if it's going to shoot back at you. These guys are really good on a charge, really good shooting at units, because obviously elves with bows, it's just a great formula. And yeah, and even in prolonged melee now, they can hold their own a little bit. Not so well as obviously like a Servants of the Eye. I wouldn't throw them into them. But you know, you're going to be able to harass that Servants of the Eye for a long, long time before you even have to think about going to melee. These guys are the quickest cav around as well. So you're not going to get caught by anything. And it is just, honestly, the whole faction, until like the build that you're building for Imladris is around these Noldorian Rangers. I mean, you can also bring the Noldorian Horsemen, which are just behind, which are the Shock Cav variant, also really, really good. If you bring like a couple of these and then all your Rangers, like bring, say, 5 Cav, you're in for a really good game. You're probably going to get several hundred kills in each one. And even if you don't win your fight because you're just outnumbered, you can win you have to fight quite easy for your team. You could almost play just a support role. If someone else plays like a Mordor or more of a mass-related sort of faction, like a Dol Guldur or something like that, you could definitely try and bring these guys and just try and rely on just a small elite army that can just kill hundreds, and I mean hundreds of enemies with these units. You also have some pretty useful other units back here. Shock infantry can be quite useful as well in a cav fight. If you ever get yourself into a cav fight and need to get yourself out of a sticky position, the shock infantry that they can provide is also pretty good. They have pikes as well, which can, again, can be useful for holding that front line if you need to. And obviously, elven archers and Noldorian archers, really, really good as well. You can sort of dictate the fight from range. They have obviously good reloading and accuracy skills, so they're going to be able to win most of those archer fights as well. If you want to also try and sit a bit more afar to start with before going in with the rangers and the horsemen and finishing off the job. But yeah, for me, Imladris has got to be number one, and it will be number one in my list for the Dawnless Days land battle factions. But yeah, there you go. Those are the lists. Let me know what you think in the comments. Are you do you agree with it? Let me know what your ranking would be. Let me know from like 1 to 5 what you would go with. Maybe you got some different options that you throw in there. Maybe you've got the same ones but just in a different order. Let me know in the comments. I'd be interested to know. But yeah, like I said, it is just my opinion on what I've seen in battles and streams and scenarios. These factions are just probably the best around when it comes to a land battle. There are obviously other good factions, but you got to take into a fact that you got to have like a good sort of range of all units. So like infantry, missiles, and cav. Cav, of course, is king, and you need a lot of it if you're going to win any of these fights. But there you go, guys. That is today's video. A little bit different, but I hope you did enjoy, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.